We're used to a federal budget that's all about the bottom line.
In dollar terms, it will show the biggest budget turnaround on record.
But today it was all about our wellbeing baseline. The government releasing a snapshot of Australia's performance when it comes to quality of life.
Across 5 themes in the first National Wellbeing Framework, we're measuring about 50 different indicators.
Those 5 themes measuring how healthy, secure, sustainable, cohesive and prosperous we're all feeling. Those 50 different indicators, well, they include Australia's life expectancy, which is trending up, our mental health, which is holding steady, life satisfaction trending slightly down, and homelessness, which has been deteriorating.
A really important part of the task is understanding where there are gaps in the data or where we would like that data to be more up to date.
Therein lies the rub. Some of the data is old. I mean, really old. We're talking about mental health stats from 2017 and 18 and financial and housing data from 2020. And a bit's happened since then.
Pandemic.
Cost of living crisis.
Housing crisis.
Mental health crisis. Financial brink.
Soaring interest rates.
The report says that people aren't having any trouble paying their mortgages. Well, if it's taken from 2020, the rates were 0.1%. Of course they weren't having trouble.
But while the concept is being laughed out of town by the opposition...
What is this about? It sounds like something you get from a kumbaya session.
The Labor Party shouldn't need a wellbeing budget to tell them that Aussies are doing it tough.
Is out of date and out of touch.
Other countries have been doing it successfully for years. New Zealand, Iceland, Finland, Scotland and Wales are all using wellbeing budgets to inform their spending. Bhutan even has a gross national happiness index.
People have wrongly thought that our social objectives and our economic objectives must be in conflict. I think they can be in concert, and that's what the National Wellbeing Framework is all about.
So could a wellbeing budget be the key to Australia thriving rather than just surviving?
Well, Warwick Smith is a wellbeing expert from the Centre for Policy Development, and he's here to talk us through today's report. Warwick, there's been lots of criticism. It's even been described as pixie dust, this report. So what is the point of all this?
Well, the point of this is to think about what sort of a country we want and what sort of things are really important to Australia. The way that governments historically have done that is focused on GDP, right? Just on increasing economic growth. Australia has had a record run of economic growth, kind of leads the world in recent decades, and yet we're going backwards in terms of our biodiversity loss, we're going backwards in terms of homelessness, we're going backwards in terms of people's economic security. So it's really clear that those traditional economic measures aren't enough to sort of increase the living standards and the well-being of the people of Australia. And surely the economy should be working for the people and for the environment, not the environment and people working for the economy, right? What a framework like this is about isn't necessarily about spending more money or doing more things. It's about how they make decisions, how they prioritise. And so when they are making those decisions about the policies that they make every day and the money that they spend every day, are they spending it right? Are they spending it in a way that's going to be good for Australians?
Just on this data though, Wazza, I'm not much of a numbers guy, but it looks like a lot of the data is pretty old. So how helpful is it really?
Yeah, that's a good question, and it's true. Some of the data is a bit outdated, and particularly, given how much has changed over the last few years with the pandemic. But I don't think that's a sort of reason to be critical. The Treasurer and Treasury are very openly saying this is a first crack at this work. We're planting a flag. We've said what we think is important and what we think we should be measuring. And I think where it's shown the data is not timely, that's just a reason to collect better data and get better at timely data measurement.
We've listed a bunch of places where they're already using these sorts of measurements. They include places like Scotland, which I've got to say, as someone of Scottish heritage, I don't necessarily think of as the happiest place on earth. Is there any evidence that these metrics actually shift the dial over time?
Yeah, so, it does really depend on the place. There are places that have just produced a dashboard like this and done nothing else, and in those instances you tend to not see much change. But then there are other places like Wales, for instance, where they sort of legislated wellbeing goals into commitments from government, and so every government agency, every public agency has to report on and do its best to increase all of these wellbeing metrics, and that really has changed things in Wales.
And most importantly, Warwick, have you read all of the books that are behind you?
I've read a few of them. You probably can't see. You probably can't see the titles, but there are quite a few of them. There are actually children's books. And I've read quite a lot of those to my children, so yeah.
That counts. That counts, Warwick.
Yeah.
Warwick, wellbeing expert and avid reader, thank you very much for your time this evening.
Thank you.